This is a map from around 250 years ago, 1760-ish, and it has something really strange on it. Hole, 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 hole. Not a quarry or a pond, just holes. Now at first I assumed this was probably just an old surveying term. It disappeared and been forgotten over time. Because oddly I can't find this feature in this area on any other map of a later date. But then I remember something someone sent me about a year ago and I didn't have time to look at it properly. A much more recent map, 1880s, maybe 100 years on, boundary holes, but not in the same area. Despite being made more than a century apart, these maps seem to share one very strange detail. Now when I started looking into this in a much deeper way, things got weird very quickly because nobody knew what these were for. Local historians, county archaeologists, even the Ordnance Survey, and in many cases, a lot of people hadn't even heard of these, myself included. All of that raises some significant questions here, because if these strange holes really were making boundaries, how old were these boundaries and who built them? And why would anyone mark a boundary with a hole? So I assumed that somebody out there would know exactly what these were. They're marked on maps in an official capacity, the late 1800s, so surely somebody out there would know exactly what these were and who dug these holes. Okay, so this beautiful circular earthwork, this feature here in the landscape, is Chiselbury Iron Age hill fort, or a camp or Iron Age enclosure, essentially, and it's beautiful. It sits next to the old Shaftesbury-Salisbury Drove Road. And if we have a look at the 1880s OS map for this camp, and we scan just a little bit to the east, well, we see a really curious feature marked on their map. Boundary holes. Let's go and take a look. Now, I'm not the first person to come across these and wonder exactly what they are. Someone had tried to unravel this mystery 6 months ago and came unstuck. They asked local historians, even Historic England, but nobody could explain exactly what they were. And when a lot of these official bodies were asked what these could be, well, there was one particular statement from someone that struck me as hugely important. Even though these holes often appear on parish boundaries, the boundaries themselves may be far older than the parishes that later inherited them. Now, many parish boundaries are said to preserve much older lines in the landscape. That adds up for sure, which means that potentially some of these parish boundaries could be at least 1,000 years old. Now, I've walked up and down this line a couple of times now, and I can't see any evidence with my own eyes of holes or at least sort of depressions in the ground. The LiDAR also shows absolutely nothing. We do, however, have sporadic bits of vegetation. Maybe that's something to consider later on. So we have a whole group of intelligent people here with no idea these existed or who built or dug them. OS confirmed their existence, but that's it. Nobody of any official or unofficial capacity can explain exactly what's going on here with these holes in the ground. And if they were dug here, seemingly perhaps to mark this boundary, well, how come we've forgotten about them in such a short period of time from when they were mapped? So if these holes really did exist in the landscape, we should be able to find some kind of trace there, even if it's a LiDAR sort of image, or even maybe something in the ground we could see today. So I've headed to here. This is Sutton Waldron in Dorset, and unlike some of the other examples, well, this place comes with something extraordinary. An estate map drawn over 250 years ago, and this map doesn't just show the holes, it actually explains them. The bounds are kept by holes in the ground. That's such a strange statement to make. It's almost as if, to me, the person, the surveyor, was making that map, and he at the time even found those holes unusual, because boundaries are normally marked by things you can see above the ground from a distance: walls, hedges, streams, banks, trees and brooks, you name it. Not holes. And yet despite that, well, somebody felt them important enough to define the boundary. Now here is the estate that we're on right now. So up there in the distance, well, we've got the line of the boundary up there, and it came from that direction across there. We're kind of right on the corner of the estate map here, right here, so we can see that we've got the definition there, and we've got that statement there. The bounds are marked by holes, and well, we're going to go and have a look up there, see if we can find anything. Despite what that sign tells us, private, no access, well, we do have a right of way up there, and probably long overdue a video that moans about access. So my feeling is most have gone, but you never know. Centuries of ploughing and farming really does change the landscape. They may well have vanished completely, but as I say, you never know, because one of the strangest things about old boundaries for me is how long they can survive that continuity in the landscape. We see Anglo-Saxon charters drawing a line, but a hole in the ground, we're normally talking about stones, trees, streams, rivers, you name it, all of the physical things you can see from a distance to mark them in the landscape. What if these holes weren't creating a boundary? What if instead these holes were preserving something that was much more older? Okay, we've still got a lot of questions to answer. I think it's about time we mapped as many of these as we can find. So at first I tried to answer the very simple question, is there any pattern to these, or are they completely random in their position in the landscape? That's always very nice to cool off in a church, but for now we need to climb a very big hill. I spoke to a number of archaeologists along the way. One of them, Adam Morgan Ibbotson,
hello everybody,
pointed out that in Yorkshire there are some examples of Bronze Age boundary markers. This one here, 2 parallel lines of holes in the ground. So are we seeing a much similar version here? These boundary holes are perhaps just a local version of that. Now, as the map that I was working on grew and grew, well, a pattern did begin to emerge. We have Sutton Waldron, we have Buckland Newton, we have Chiselbury, and we have a cluster here by Hambledon Hill. Okay, so this is the start of the climb up Hambledon Hill for me today. We have all sorts of goodies up here: Iron Age hill fort, Neolithic causeway enclosure, all sorts of archaeological goodies to see. 29 degrees. We're going to need the hat. On the 19th century Ordnance Survey maps, we find them here too, boundary holes. So naturally I wanted to know whether anything survives today. Could we still see them? Were there any lines of depressions, changes in vegetation, anything at all that might explain what the surveyors had recorded? Well, if those holes existed, well, we should see them all the way along that boundary that I've just walked on. That's a parish boundary. I think the landscape's done a really good job of hiding them. Wonky camera for a reason, because if I spin the camera around now it's broadly level, but you see that fence there in the distance there? But again, that's still part of that parish boundary, and that's the part where it says hole, hole, hole. We can't see anything, even the LiDAR hides it. Maybe those, it's been postulated those clumps there of a hedge sporadically placed along that line, well, maybe they're remnants somehow of these holes. The more examples I plotted, the less interested I became in the holes themselves. Maybe I was never going to see them, but instead I found myself looking at the boundaries. We seem to be seeing these in a variety of landscapes. Certainly here we have a very prehistoric landscape, almost leading up to it, but nevertheless on a boundary. We see them on a routeway back at Chiselden, Wiltshire, where we started this journey. Perhaps maybe these have been inherited and reused generation after generation, perhaps even before these parish boundaries. Okay, so we have the old Drove Road, we have Hambledon here, we have the Sutton Waldron estate. We're on high ancient landscapes there, but that doesn't prove they're old at all. But then we came across something completely different, a different position in that landscape. Okay, up until this point, well, we've been dealing with maps, lines on the maps, physical stuff, but then we stumble across something which is potentially a bit more valuable to today's search: people. Okay, so I found this next to the boundary. This is a huge, I'm going to say quarry, 30 metres long, rather than the hole in the ground that we're actually looking for. Nice try though. Now, one of the most important pieces of evidence I think I found was that of a walk, a boundary walk in 1758, the preambulation of Newton Buckland. Now, these walks, known as preambulations, were used to record and remember the exact course of a boundary. And what's remarkable is how often boundary holes appear in the description. Now, the surveyor in this walk, he just goes from one thing to another: boundary stone to a stream to a lane, then to a boundary hole, and then back to a boundary stone and a lane and another marker, as if these holes were just completely normal, absolutely no special treatment or comment whatsoever. This is crucial because it means that boundary holes weren't a mistake. There were real features in the landscape, features that people recognised and used. But for me, the most intriguing piece of evidence comes from Sutton Waldron. Because here on this very map, this estate here, which is that there, while we have that really curious statement drawn by the surveyor, the bounds are kept by holes in the ground. And referring back to that preambulation at Newton Buckland 10 or 15 miles away, which is contemporary with this estate map, well, maybe this wasn't a new thing to the surveyor. Maybe in fact it was the opposite, an old way of physically mapping and identifying the landscape. That's why he wrote it. And here we are, 250 years or so on more, and that's a relatively short period of time in my opinion for earthworks, and yet we have nothing visible along here. This is one line of that estate. I've searched many others as well. We have nothing. But one thing is pretty clear now. Well, these holes were real and they did the job they were clearly set out to do. Which leaves a rather odd problem. If everybody once knew what boundary holes were, why did we forget? And perhaps more importantly, how old are they and who built them? And is this what they were originally used for, just marking a boundary in the landscape? Okay, so from all of this research that I've done to date, I can't see anybody that can come up with an explanation or oh yes, we have this document that states they were built for this, and we have no archaeology whatsoever on them either. You see the Buckland Newton preambulation that just treats them like a boundary stone or a stream or any other marker in the landscape you could see. It's just like they belong to part of a fence. The Sutton Waldron estate map goes a little bit further. We have that writing. The bounds are kept by holes in the ground. Whoever drew that map wasn't explaining a mystery. They were recording something that at the time seemed normal, albeit they had a need to explain it. Perhaps it was simply one part of a much larger system designed to preserve those boundaries. You see, a boundary stone might be moved, a wooden post might rot, a tree would of course die, but a hole could be redug, refinished and maintained, passed on from one generation to the next. Now the more you look into the Dorset boundaries specifically, the more intriguing they become. We have a lot of historians that suggest that these, well, are over 1,000 years old. They predate the parishes that now took them on. We're talking Anglo-Saxon era, maybe 1,200, 1,300 years old at least. They may have been redug many times, maintained and refreshed as generations came and went. But perhaps that is exactly the point. Boundary holes aren't really a mystery about holes. They're a mystery about memory. The communities preserving the same line in the landscape for century after century, long after the original reason for that line had been forgotten. Maybe the remarkable thing isn't that we actually dug holes in the ground to mark boundaries. Maybe the absolutely staggering thing is that we simply forgot about them. These are on maps, OS maps from 125, 140 years ago, and they've simply gone from living memory, and that's a bit sad really. I've been Paul. I hope you've enjoyed this little journey. If you have, click subscribe, and if you really enjoyed this journey, click on the members or the join button or the Patreon button in the description below, and I'll see you this time next week.